If found guilty, the state is asking for the death penalty.
We, the jury,
he is the lowest form of human life.
Engaged in the commission or attempted commission of rape.
He should be put to death for his crimes.
Nothing that I have seen or heard has changed my mind factually about what occurred.
Mr. Benavides has spent the last 24 years on death row.
I feel that the damn court let us down.
It was this bomb that was dropped on the jury. They couldn't hear or see anything else after that.
You can't be fair and impartial. You're in the wrong business there.
Good evening. Good to have you with us here for 17 News at 5. I'm Tammy Melchak.
And I'm Jim Scott. We begin tonight with news that is shaking up our local justice system this hour. The death sentence for a Kern County man reversed today, 26 years after he was arrested for murder. We have team coverage tonight, including whether death row inmate Vicente Benavides will seek financial compensation for all of the time he spent in prison. But we begin tonight with 17's Olivia Lavoie, who broke this story last week with details of today's ruling. Olivia?
Jim, it is incredibly rare for the state Supreme Court to completely overturn a death penalty conviction. But today, the highest court in California said that false evidence was used to win a conviction in this case, and that the false evidence is so overwhelming that the conviction had to be reversed. Their decision was unanimous. This all started in 1991 in Delano when a then 42-year-old Vicente Benavides was charged with sexually assaulting his girlfriend's toddler so severely that it killed her. But the case took a big turn in 2009 when Dr. Jess Diamond, who testified for the prosecution in 1993 that the child was raped, recanted his testimony after he says he got the girl's medical records that made him completely change his mind. Other doctors who testified to the child being sexually assaulted also later recanted. Justices cite several medical experts who reviewed the case who say the cause of death determined by the pathologist in 1991 is, quote, absurd. And another doctor interviewed by the state attorney general's office says she's embarrassed the pathologist didn't know anatomy better. Doctors now believe the cause of death is blunt force trauma to the abdomen. But how that happened to 21-month-old Consuelo may never be known. Some experts theorize that the girl could have been hit by a car. A big question, of course, is what happens now? Ultimately, District Attorney Lisa Green has the final say. It's up to her to decide whether or not the case against Vicente Benavides will be retried. A representative from her office said that Lisa Green would not be making that announcement this afternoon. But during the course of the last month, throughout our research on this case, I spoke with Green, and she told me if the state Supreme Court overturned the conviction, the case would likely be too difficult to retry. Now, we also spoke with another key player in this case today, former prosecutor Robert Carbone. And for Carbone, it goes without saying that what's happened with this case was very unexpected.
Everything that I did was presented to me, and I tried to make the presentation to the jury based on the collective, evidence that we have from all the witnesses. I had no indication and never have had any indication other than from the most recent events that there was ever any question with any of the evidence presented. It became a battle of the experts. And based on that, the Attorney General's office, for whatever reason, felt that the best avenue was to concede. And again, I personally would not have done that myself in any form or fashion in this kind of a case, because we now have the terrible circumstances of facing what will happen now. Will he be retried on the limited issues that could be available to the district attorney's office? And if not, the alternative is to release him to the public. Some would say, well, he's going to go back to Mexico, and well, that's not really good for anyone living in the area where he would live.
So are you still convinced that he's a child rapist and murderer?
Nothing that I have seen or heard has changed my mind factually about what occurred.
For Carbone, this case and the death of little Consuelo has never left him.
She's not forgotten. Even now, hopefully, people can use this to work toward a better result in the long run. I think that, again, I've said this before, Kern County is going one way and the state of California is going another way on issues like this. And it's very hard to fight these cases when the state is committed to getting people off death row.
Now, Carbone acknowledges the challenges the DA's office could face if they attempt to retry this case, but he says he still hopes to see Benavides back here in a Kern County courtroom. Reporting live from downtown, I'm Olivia Lavoie, 17 News.
All right, Olivia, thank you. Former Kern County Counsel Teresa Goldner was here this morning as that ruling was released online by the state Supreme Court in San Francisco. Ms. Goldner is also a former federal magistrate judge in the Eastern District of California and a former Kern County Court Commissioner.
She shared her thoughts on our breaking news coverage just after that ruling came down this morning, and she has returned now with some more legal insight for us here at 5. Terry, thank you so much for joining us once again. Now, you said earlier, and we'll start here, that scenarios like this just don't happen. We don't see these.
They happen once in a blue moon, if even then. With this Supreme Court was very clear in its, I think, feeling aghast at what happened in this case, and that this case compelled a reversal.
Robert Carbone talked about the terrible circumstances now facing the district attorney's office and where we go from here. What is next for Vicente Benavides, do you think?
Well, I did some research on what the next procedures are in the criminal case, and the district attorney, District Attorney Green, can decide at any time, at any moment, to retry Mr. Benavides. That's her decision to make. However, the California Supreme Court's opinion will be final in 30 days. It's not final yet. It takes another 30 days. And the Attorney General, who represented the people of the state of California in the habeas case, has 15 days to ask for a rehearing. And if they ask for a rehearing, it'll extend that final date by however long it gets extended if he asks for more time. Once the Supreme Court order is final, then the case will come back to the Superior Court. It'll be assigned to a judge in the Kern County Superior Court, and all of Mr. Benavides' pretrial rights will reattach. And that includes his right to have a trial counsel and a right to have counsel appointed for him if he can't afford one, the right to have bail consideration, the right to be released on bail while he's awaiting trial, and interestingly also the right to a speedy trial. Those are just some of the ones that he will have if it comes back to trial. The district attorney can decide in her own prosecutorial discretion whether to retry this case or not, and she can choose whether to simply retry it on the original charges back from the original complaint, the old complaint, or she can amend the complaint and add additional or different charges if she wishes to do so. Also, the assigned trial judge can grant a motion to dismiss if the judge is so inclined, if the judge is convinced that perhaps the district attorney hasn't made a decision quickly enough on whether she wants to retry it or not, and there's no good cause to delay that decision. So the trial court, at the end of the day, also has the right to dismiss the case if the circumstances justify it.
So let me ask you, if DA Lisa Green decides not to go forward and retry this case, how soon could Mr. Benavides conceivably walk out a free man?
Well, once the case is dismissed, then the trial judge who's assigned to the case will order that he be released from custody. But it would take another court order for him to be released from custody.
All right, so we're not looking at any time soon, certainly not this week.
No, but for example, if the district attorney decided tomorrow not to dismiss it, I would think that was something that could happen in a matter of days, if not hours.
All right.
All right. Terry Goldner, any final thoughts, any final reflections on the uniqueness of this case? It's not precedent setting, but there are very few cases like this in California history.
One of the things that I was so intrigued by about this case was how quickly the Supreme Court responded, how strongly they reacted to this case, and how this is a case where so much of the testimony depended on what somebody else said or what someone else looked at, and at the end of the day, it was based on the testimony of people who did not review all of the medical records. And based on my review of the Supreme Court's opinion and the case, it appears that every single one of the medical experts, except for one, the county pathologist, who testified as to the cause of death, recanted their testimony, repudiated it. And I've repudiated it. I find that to be very interesting and very unique.
All right. Yeah. Terry Goldner, 17 News legal analyst. Thank you for coming in tonight.
Thank you so much.
We have more here. Now, Vicente Benavides is now 68 years old. He is from Mexico and only speaks Spanish. Now, court documents state Benavides was born into a family with a history of mental illness, alcoholism, extreme poverty, malnutrition, and horrific physical and psychological abuse. It also states that he grew up in a poor farming settlement with no running water or electricity. Vicente Benavides began working in the fields with his father at age 4. At the time of Consuelo Verdugo's death, Benavides was in a relationship with her mother and worked as a farm laborer in Delano. Now, Consuelo Verdugo was just 21 months old when she died of internal injuries in November of 1991. Benavides was alone with her for about 15 minutes just before her injuries were noticed. Dr. James D. Dibden was the autopsy surgeon hired by the Kern County coroner. He previously ruled the child died of injuries caused by a vicious rape. She was treated at 3 hospitals before she died: Delano Regional Medical Center, Kern Medical Center, and UCLA Medical Center. She died 8 days after her injuries were first discovered.
One of the big questions now, will Vicente Benavides seek compensation after all those years he sat on California's death row? Our team coverage continues now with 17's Kristen Price. Kristen?
Well, Tammy, in wrongful conviction cases, state law provides a set compensation of $100 per day of incarceration. In Benavides' case, that's about $1 million, but he'll have to prove to a state board that he didn't commit the crime and he didn't contribute to the conviction. California law states a claim for wrongful imprisonment must be filed with the California Victim Compensation Board within a period of 2 years after release. The Santa Clara University School of Law laid out the process from there. A hearing officer will make a recommendation whether or not to make a payment. The board then decides. If the board approves the claim, it must be also approved by the legislature and signed by the governor. If the board does not approve payment, it then goes through an appeals process. According to the board's website, the number of claims denied is more than double the number approved. Since 1981, the board denied 66 claims and approved 30. In many cases, the claims are denied because the board decided the person filing had contributed to their conviction. And some wrongful conviction cases around the nation have settled for millions of dollars. Others are never compensated. Kristen Price, 17 News.
Kristen, thanks. And this is the subject of tonight's 17 interactive feedback poll. Tonight we are asking, should Vicente Benavides be compensated by Kern County for being wrongly convicted? You can call or send a text to 888-4617. Press 1 if you think Benavides should be compensated by Kern County for being wrongly convicted, and 2 if not. You can also tweet, email, or Facebook your comments. And once again, that phone line is 888-4617. We'll have some of your comments and the first results from tonight's poll coming up new at 5:30.
Now, to help articulate just how rare it is for the state Supreme Court to completely overturn a death penalty conviction, we take a look at all cases like this throughout the state. 17's Lori Lizarraga joining us now with that part of our coverage tonight. Lori?
Well, Jim, according to the National Registry of Exonerations, there are just 3 other cases in California where death row inmates were ever exonerated. Patrick Croy was convicted in 1979 for the murder of Eureka police officer Jesse Bo Hitson in Siskiyou County in Northern California. During his retrial in May 1990, Croy testified that he acted in self-defense. He was acquitted. Eventually, all of his convictions from the 1979 judgment were vacated, and Croy was released in 2005. In 1981, the body of 23-year-old Carolyn Grayson was found with 6 bullets in her chest. Troy Lee Jones was arrested and charged with Grayson's murder in 1982 in Merced County. But the prosecution dismissed the charges in 1996 after Grayson's daughter recanted her trial testimony. Finally, 45-year-old William Maxwell was shot to death in Long Beach in 1978. Oscar Morris was convicted 5 years later for that murder and sentenced to death. But he was freed in the year 2000 after the key witness in the case, Morris's childhood friend, recanted his testimony. Now, we were unable to determine whether any of these men were ever compensated for their time spent in prison. To see a full list of the other men convicted in Kern County Superior Court and sentenced to die in San Quentin Prison, you can visit our website, kerngoldenempire.com/questionable conviction. Lori Lizarraga, 17 News.
Lori, thanks. And stay with 17 News for continuing coverage of today's ruling in the Vicente Benavides case. You can see Olivia Lavois's exclusive investigation from last week on our website, kerngoldenempire.com. We'll continue to update this case there, as well as on our KGET Facebook and Twitter pages.